Hello everybody, and welcome to Ancient Architects. Please subscribe now to get the latest ancient history news and independent research from around the world. As prehistoric Britain gathered at Stonehenge, people living in what is now Germany were erecting their own grand monument, a complex of nested circular ditches, pits and rows of posts that were interspersed with the remains of women and children, whom experts believe were human sacrifices. The German site of Pamelt, which dates back to as early as 2320 BC, is dotted with 29 shafts containing objects such as shattered jugs, but also skeletons, some of them mutilated, of women and children. The monument has a number of astronomical alignments with the sun, and with these alignments, together with the burials, many experts believe it was a ritual centre for the ancient people of Germany. The late Neolithic early Bronze Age site, which is 377 feet in diameter, has been under reconstruction for several years, and has just opened to the public for the first time. Dr. André Spitzer said, "The unique configuration of circles is at a level of Stonehenge. The only difference is that in Pamelt, everything was made of wood, and therefore bygone." The site is now on the tourism path called the Himmelsweg, which means path to heaven, a route in Saxony-Anhalt that has a number of sites where people are thought to have observed the heavens and celestial bodies in prehistoric times. Experts have spent a massive $2.27 million rebuilding the site and getting it ready for the public. At Stonehenge in England, the remains of only one man is believed to have been a sacrificial burial, a man in his late 20s, who was shot repeatedly with flint arrows at close range. But far from being a sacrificial victim, it could well have been an execution, maybe someone from a neighbouring tribe, or maybe a criminal. At the German Henge, there were 10 dismembered bodies of women and children, 4 of whom sustained severe injuries just prior to their death. Fractured skulls and rib bones were found buried in plots alongside axes, drinking vessels, butchered animal bones and cairns. What is clear is that the victims' last moments were gruesome. It appears they were thrown or pushed into the pit, and at least one of the teenage victims had their hands bound together, which certainly doesn't sound like a sacrificial, ritual burial. The site was discovered in 1991, just 2 years after the Berlin Wall fell, when people in an aeroplane flying overhead spotted it, but only recently have in-depth excavations taken place. Across Europe and Britain, henge monuments were used from the Neolithic to early Bronze Age, and the German example was destroyed around 2050 BC. Henge monuments like the pyramids of Egypt, I believe, had different uses to different people through the ages. And taking the most researched henge in the world, Stonehenge, as an example, we know that it had multiple phases of construction and usage by different people. The earliest history of Stonehenge, and just about all henge monuments in the UK, was when it was just a circular ditch in the ground, which is something I will discuss in greater detail in my forthcoming book. And its use, I'm afraid, I won't give away any spoilers today. But the later period of time, when the large sarsen stones appeared, certainly marks a different phase in the history of Stonehenge. And at this time, I certainly believe that the function of all henge monuments changed. But to what? This is when the debate begins. Were stone and wood circles ritual or functional monuments, or both? Of course, the experts sell the exciting, ritual, religious, and astronomical explanation, and sure, they do present some quite compelling evidence, which I will go into in a future video. The experts believe that the German henge was a ritual monument, and that it was even destroyed in a ritual, due to the fact that artefacts were found in the post holes. One of the ditches was also filled with ash, likely from the burnt wooden posts, which dates to the same period as the artefacts. Spitzer says, "It looks like at the end of the main occupation, around 2050 BC, they extracted the posts, put offerings into the post holes, and probably burned all the wood and back-shoveled it into the ditch, so they closed all the features. It was still visible above ground, but only as a shovel depression." But far from being a ritual end to the wooden henge, maybe later people were simply clearing the site so that the land could be worked. Maybe they removed the old wooden posts, filled the holes with not offerings but simply rubbish, the trash that littered the ancient site, and then used the ash from the burnt wood to simply fill the ditch. This would be a comprehensive way to clear and level the land. No, it's not as exciting for an interpretation, but it is just as likely, if not more likely, as it having a ritualistic end. As well as the women and children, 13 men aged between 17 and 30 were buried in the eastern end of the German henge. They had very simple burials and were buried without artefacts, and some were clearly a second burial, reburied at the site after the henge was destroyed. The reason for this we will never know. But before it was levelled, Spitzer says that the monument was probably a place for people to perform rituals, and the wooden posts were arranged with respect to the equinoxes and the solstices. The German henge's 4 entrances were primed for the days halfway between the equinoxes and the solstices, which he says is an important time for agrarian communities. In this video, I would like to offer another interpretation for henge monuments. I don't doubt that they were public spaces in their later history, but what if they were in fact places where prisoners of enemy tribes met their fate? What if they were like Stonehenge gallows, where people were murdered and then maybe some were even buried inside? There is no reason to assume a ritualistic, sacrificial death for the people inside. All we know for sure is that at these sites there was death, and some of the victims suffered a truly terrible fate. Interestingly, the publication Stonehenge Complete gives the derivation of the name Stonehenge as coming from the Old English Saxon word stan, meaning stone, and while some say that henge means hinge, referring to the suspended lintels, others say it derives from henson or hennen, meaning hang or gallows, or instruments of torture. Like Stonehenge's trilithons, medieval gallows consisted of 2 uprights with a lintel joining them, rather than the inverted L shape we are more familiar with. I'm not surprised that the Anglo-Saxon and later medieval Britons believed Stonehenge was an ancient stone gallows, and although modern experts tend to discard this idea, what if they were in fact right about this? There is certainly evidence at Stonehenge, but also on the continent in Germany. In many cultures, public executions and gatherings have continued into recent times. Gruesome events cheered on by countless spectators as the lives of criminals and enemies of the state are taken in barbaric ways. If this can be done in more recent times, then it could certainly have been done in the Stone Age, so maybe stone and wood circles were public arenas, but where people were actually hung, crucified, or murdered by other means. Maybe that is what their function actually was, an important monument in the functioning of a Stone Age society, and not one for religion or ritual, but for order. The sun may have been marked with stones and posts to mark the passage of time, to measure the sentences of the prehistoric tribal enemies, such as how long the people would be hung from the stones or posts for, and not to worship the sun for bringing light and warmth, as we are led to believe. Maybe not everybody was killed, but some served a lengthy punishment inside the henge. Ritual is often given as an interpretation for the unexplainable, but as we do not know anything about Neolithic beliefs across Britain and Europe, I think we should look at all other possible interpretations that fit the evidence, and Stonehenge and the German Woodhenge certainly could have been centres of punishment, of handing out sentences and where people were punished or put to death. I'm not saying this is what happened. All I am saying is that without knowing the truth, this is just as likely as henge monuments being sites of ancient religious and ritualistic importance. I don't discount the idea that ancient people held spiritual and ritualistic beliefs, far from it, but I do doubt that the ancient architects of the world built their incredible megalithic monuments specifically for supernatural purposes. I'd just like to tell you about becoming a member of Ancient Architects. This new feature from YouTube allows people to support the Ancient Architects channel without having to set up a Patreon account. I've created some badges that will highlight your comments below the videos, and I'll be able to give exclusive updates to members only. In the future, as I'm able to work ahead of myself, I'll allow members to get early access to each video I make. Just like with Patreon, the money will go to improving the channel, to future trips to ancient sites, and to allow me to spend the time researching new and exciting subjects for the Ancient Architects channel. Thank you for supporting me, I really appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you very much for watching this episode of Ancient Architects. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel, please like the video, and please leave a comment below. Thank you very much.